I would say that I think on a philosophical level, one could hold the position that they don't believe the state of Israel is legitimate and not be anti-Semitic. I think it is fair to come to that philosophical conclusion. I will say on a practical level, the only way the Jewish state goes away is with the genociding of the Jews that live there. Because if you transfer authority over to the Palestinians, I don't see any world where Fatah or Hamas doesn't proceed to immediately start killing Jews. And the reason why I say this is, especially when you look at Hamas's charter, they're pretty open about it. They're pretty open about it. We're going to get into some of the things that Hezbollah leaders have said as well, and Iranian leaders have said as well. But I think it's important to understand that can you sit in a place of safety and say, well, I'm not anti-Semitic, but I don't think the Israeli state should exist. Yes, you can say that. I believe the practical outworking, if that policy was actually implemented, is that it would almost by necessity result in the genociding of Jews in the area. Okay, so I want to make that distinction. I think you can philosophically hold that position. Practically, I don't see any way it doesn't lead to mass murder of Jews for being Jews. The third argument is the one that Hamas makes, which is just, this is about them against the Jews. That's it. It is an anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic argument in its purest form. They believe the Jews are evil and they want to kill them. And they believe that killing them is not only an acceptable thing to do, they believe it is a moral mandate. Right? So it's important to understand this, because there's so many people that think, well, Hamas wouldn't be doing this if Israel didn't exist. Really? Because that's not what Hamas says. That's not what the Ayatollah Khomeini says. In fact, some of these leaders go so far as to say, no, we want all the Jews to come to Israel because it's easier to kill them if they're all in one place. Now, a lot of Westerners like to look at them like, they don't really mean that. Okay, well, when a rocket goes through your front door, you can tell me that they don't really mean it. They seem to be pretty dedicated to the premise. Okay, so why am I making this distinction? I'm making this distinction because I've become very, very frustrated with people telling me that in the position I take, that I just don't understand, that I'm just ignorant. So I'm here to tell you, I don't believe I'm ignorant. You may think I'm wrong, but I don't believe I'm ignorant of the various arguments that have been made. I don't think I'm ignorant of the history. Are there things I don't know? Sure. Nobody has complete, accurate information of all historical data. Nobody has that. But I do think I understand enough about my reading of the history of the region from multiple independent sources who don't agree with each other on the history of the region. I think I've read enough of that to be able to form at least an informed opinion on the subject. I don't presume that I know everything. I don't presume that, everybody's perfect. I don't presume that everyone that agrees with me is correct and everyone that disagrees with me is wrong. But I wanted to lay out that this is my understanding of the various arguments, right? What is the position I take? And I'm going to tell everyone right now, so if they want to turn off, they can. If they want to send me angry emails, feel free. I believe that Israel has a right to exist. I believe that Israel as a state should exist. I believe that it should exist in the area that it's in, right? That's my belief system. Why did I caveat all of this? Because I wanted people to know where I'm coming from, right? I don't want anybody to be confused about what I believe and why. We've done other episodes where we've talked about the history of Israel, which will probably provide some insight into why I believe that, why I believe the Jewish state should exist and that it should exist in what's known as the Levant. Okay, this does not mean I have any animosity to Arabs living in the Levant. It doesn't mean that I want them to die. It doesn't mean I want them to suffer. I don't want any of that. I want them to live prosperous lives. I also think the Jews have a right to live prosperous lives in that area, and I think they have the right to have their own state in that area. And I think it makes sense because it was their historical homeland. And the Jews have consistently lived there for like 3,000 years. So I think this argument that this is just modern colonialism is, I don't buy it. I don't think there is a good argument for that. In the West, we are so convinced that nobody could possibly actually want to do these things unless they were just driven to it, or it was collateral damage, or and what it is it's arrogance. It's Western arrogance. It's treating people, treating terrorist organizations almost like children. Oh, you don't really believe that. As long as we give you as long as we give you your own state, or as long as we give you this, or as long as we give you aid, well, then you won't do these things. You're just driven to it. And it's like, no, they want to do this.
When you give them aid, they take the fuel that Israel gives them for their generators to pump water, then put it in their trucks to go do more terrorism.
I remember when Hamas took all of the pipes in Gaza that were supposed to be for like the water supply and gas lines and stuff like that, and they converted them into rockets.
Yeah, they turn them into rudimentary rockets.
And then they wonder why there's
and again,
problems with water access.
Just one more thing to understand, like 3,000 Hamas members crossed the border that day. And then civilians followed them.
That's the other thing that people don't properly understand. Because it's so close, everyone thinks that Hamas fighters did this. Gazan civilians then crossed the border and looted and proceeded to also engage in this activity. When they drove back with people in the trucks, it's not like Gazans were horrified by it. They were pouring out into the streets and celebrating and slapping bodies and kicking. So again, the two major revelations out of this, where again, when people tell you they want to murder you, start taking them seriously. Okay, this leftist claptrap of treating everybody like, oh, all they want is, no. They come from a different worldview. They believe different things. If you are a stated terrorist, if you believe that all Jews should be murdered, right, it may be really convenient for you in your safe little seat at the sociology department at Berkeley saying, oh, well, they don't really mean that. I guarantee you it's a very different world for people living on the business end of a rocket. And they're at a point where wherever you go, it's like, look, we take them seriously. They believe it. They want to do it. They hate us. That's it. If we said, all right, we'll give you, like, how many different two-state solutions have there been? 5? All of them more generous than the next. All of them reject it. Right? They've come to the conclusion, we could give up everything. We could say, all right, we're pulling up stakes. Israel no longer exists. Hamas would still be coming over to kill us. They hate us. That's it. It is a fundamental part of their worldview, and they're going to continue to do it. And so this idea of, well, why can't you just do what more foreign aid? I mean, UN foreign aid funds a lot of the schools that are then being taught, they're teaching primary level children that one of their most noble tasks that they can do is die killing Jews. This is another thing that we don't seem to understand. It's like, nobody would really do this to their own women and children. They don't see it. They see it as a sacrifice. Like we had a whole Y minute where we talked about this. What Hamas is relying upon is they know they can't beat the IDF. Let me put it this way. Hamas went into the Israel that day knowing they can't beat the IDF. They went in that day knowing that the IDF would come after the hostages. They went in that day knowing that they were going to use their own civilians on top of legitimate military targets in an effort to increase civilian casualties, their civilian casualties. And yet they knew that Western media and academia would back their play and make a false moral equivalency argument. The question that you got to start asking yourself, if you're serious about this, how did they know they could trust left-wing academia and media to back their play? How did they know? Because that's exactly what took place. And yeah, you can chalk it
because they always do.
You can chalk it up to funding. You can chalk it up to all of it. Sure. Yes, absolutely. But there is something fundamentally different this time. And I think one of the things Americans do need to wake up to, because I realize that there's a lot of people on the right too that are like, look, not our problem, Israel's problem. Okay. I'm not saying that the United States military should go in and fight this war. I'm not saying that. I'm not advocating for that. In the entire time that we were over there and everyone we talked to, none of them asked for that, actually. They're like, no, our war, we want to fight it. We could use some munitions. But that's the part where I think people need to wake up to the fact that, look, that ideology doesn't stop with Israel. And I'm not someone that claims that, oh, we've got to fight him over there or else we'll have to fight him here. I'm not someone that makes that argument every 5 seconds like Bush did and everybody else. But there is something inherently evil about the idea of we want to completely genocide an entire group of people based off of their ethnicity and their faith. And I don't think that stops, especially when I look at the history of certain organizations. That doesn't stop with Jews.
But somehow they have flipped the script to say that genociding the Palestinians is what's really going on. How do they flip when it's totally obvious that...
Because the left believes that if you deliberately misgender someone, you're genociding trans people.
That's true.
Like the left doesn't only make up new words like cis, right? They completely redefine words that we already have and used to understand, right? So they'll call Gaza's an open air prison. Okay, well, are you mad at Egypt? No. Why not? Well, because they're not Jews, right? Like Israel's an apartheid state. How is that possible when Arabs can vote, run for office, serve in the military? There's Arabs on the Supreme Court. There's Muslims on the Supreme Court of Israel. Any Jews on the Supreme Courts of Islamic countries? Right? Like, they're genociding everything. If Israel wanted to genocide everyone in Gaza, they could do it. And yet the population of Palestinians in Gaza has increased exponentially. Here's what's interesting. The next time somebody tells you Israel's an apartheid state, ask them, what are the criteria that makes something an apartheid state? And you know what they will end up describing? Almost every single Arab state in the region. Not all of them, but almost every single Arab state in the region. And yet, no connection is made. When you can come up with an objective set of criteria that actually describe, right, everyone except the people that you're accusing of it, and you make no connection, that's intentional. That is intentional. So listen, do I believe that every Arab is a part of this? Absolutely not. I know for a fact they're not. Do I believe every Muslim agrees with this? Absolutely not. I know for a fact they don't. But should we start taking Hamas and Hezbollah seriously? Yes, they mean it. They intend to do it. And even if you don't believe, I believe that Israel has a right to exist. Even if you don't believe that, but you're not anti-Semitic or you don't bear any, direct ill will against Jewish people, understand that without the state of Israel, these groups don't stop trying to kill Jews. So again, I think you should take these organizations at their word. And I think you should also understand that they have a lot more popular support than the left would like you to believe. The other thing that you need to understand about this that I think is very, very interesting is that when you listen to the left in America talk about this, go to one of these protests and say, what river, what sea? They don't know because it's not important to them. Because for them, this is not about Israel or Palestine or understanding the nuances or complexities of a conflict that's been going on for over 2,000 years. It's not about any of that. It's about a left-wing ideology rooted in critical theory, which breaks down everybody based off of oppressor and oppressed. And they have come to the conclusion that this is the oppressors and these are the oppressed, and that's it. And that's all the justification they require.
This is why they're obsessed about the borders of Palestine. But if you care about the borders of France or Germany or the United Kingdom, you're a racist, you're a bigot. Yeah.
It's like it does need to be understood that there is a common thread among leftist organizations and leftist ideology, not liberal, leftist ideology, and what is going on over there. And if you don't make that connection, then you're deliberately not seeing it. You're deliberately not seeing it.